The roses hit the floor first. Not my heart, not my dignity, but those perfect red roses. I watched them scatter across our marble foyer, each petal a testament to my betrayal. James wasn't supposed to be home. He never came home early. That was the problem, wasn't it? David stood there in James's Tom Ford robe, the $5,000 Christmas gift I'd given my husband just months ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. "It's not what it looks like," I stammered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. But it was exactly what it looked like. David didn't even try to hide it, his smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "You weren't supposed to be back yet," he said casually, as if addressing a waiter who'd brought the wrong wine. I watched my husband's face, waiting for the explosion. The screaming. The rage. Instead, James smiled. That smile terrified me more than any anger could have. It was cold, calculated, almost predatory. He nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. "Enjoy the robe, David," he said quietly. "It won't fit you for long." Then he turned and walked away, leaving the roses bleeding red across our perfect white floor. I should have known then that this was just the beginning. That smile would haunt my dreams for months to come. But I was too caught up in the moment, in the panic, in the guilt that threatened to swallow me whole. David tried to pull me close, but I pushed him away. "This is bad," I whispered, my voice shaking. "This is really bad." David laughed, that rich, confident laugh that had first drawn me to him. "Relax, Emma," he said, shrugging off the robe. "James is too controlled, too proper to make a scene. He'll probably just file for divorce quietly. That's what these Silicon Valley types do." But David didn't know James like I did. Hadn't seen the steel beneath that polished exterior. Hadn't witnessed the ruthless determination that had built his tech empire. I met James Anderson 5 years ago at a charity gala in San Francisco. I was a small-town girl from Ohio, trying to make it as an event planner in the big city. He was already a rising star in the tech world. Brilliant, handsome, and impossibly kind. He swept me off my feet with his quiet confidence and genuine interest in my dreams. Within a year, we were married. I traded my tiny apartment for a mansion in Pacific Heights. My Honda for a Tesla. My simple life for one of privilege and luxury. And for a while, it was perfect. Until it wasn't. Until the late nights at the office became longer. Until the romantic dinners turned into quick kisses goodbye. Until I felt more like a trophy than a wife. That's when David Cooper entered the picture. James's best friend and business partner. The yang to James's yin. Where James was controlled, David was spontaneous. Where James was quiet, David was alive with energy. He made me feel seen again. Desired. Alive. The affair started slowly. A lingering touch her. A meaningful glance there. Then one night, after too much wine and too little restraint, we crossed a line we could never uncross. I told myself it was just physical at first. A way to feel something, anything, in my golden cage. But it became more. David understood me in ways James never tried to anymore. Or so I thought. The weeks after James caught us were strange. He didn't move out. Didn't file for divorce. Didn't even mention what he'd seen. He just watched. With that same cold smile. I started noticing little things. My favorite Chanel perfume would move from my vanity to my dresser. Photos from our wedding would appear in odd places. My phone started acting strange, messages delivering late. Calls dropping at odd times. I told myself I was being paranoid. Guilt playing tricks on my mind. David said the same thing when I confided in him. But he was having his own problems. His offshore accounts were suddenly frozen. Anonymous tips about financial irregularities started reaching the company board. His carefully crafted reputation in Silicon Valley began to crack. We were both jumping at shadows. Both feeling like we were being watched. Both knowing, deep down, that James was behind it all. But we couldn't prove anything. He was too smart for that. Too careful. Too patient. I started losing sleep. Lost weight. Jumped at every unexpected sound. My friends started acting strange around me. Canceling lunch dates. Avoiding my calls. Then the photos appeared. Anonymous Instagram account. Me and David, caught in intimate moments we thought were private. The scandal exploded across social media. TMZ ran the story, tech titan's wife in $1 million affair. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters. Former friends. Family members expressing their disappointment. Through it all, James remained perfectly civil. Asked about my day over dinner. Brought me coffee in the morning. Smiled that terrifying smile. I was living with a stranger who wore my husband's face. A predator in an Armani suit. David tried to be supportive, but he was fighting his own battles. The board was asking questions about missing funds. Investors were pulling out. His wife filed for divorce after seeing the photos. Everything was falling apart, piece by carefully orchestrated piece. One night, I found James in his study, drinking whiskey and staring out at the San Francisco skyline. "Why don't you just divorce me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He turned, that smile playing at his lips. "Divorce you," he said softly. "Oh, Emma. That would be too easy. Too quick. You and David didn't just betray my trust. You tried to take everything from me. My marriage. My company. My life." He took a sip of whiskey, his eyes never leaving mine. "Now I'm going to take everything from you. Both of you. Slowly. Piece by piece. Until there's nothing left but regret." I ran from the study, my heart pounding. For the first time, I truly understood what we were dealing with. This wasn't just revenge. This was destruction. Calculated. Methodical. Complete. I called David, my hands shaking as I dialed. "We need to talk," I said when he answered. "Something's wrong. James, he's not just angry. He's..." But before I could finish, David cut me off. "I can't talk right now," he said, his voice tight with stress. "The FBI is here. They're saying something about fraud. Embezzlement. I have to go." The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, as my world continued to crumble. Outside, the San Francisco fog rolled in, thick and suffocating. Just like the guilt that threatened to choke me. Just like the fear that kept me awake at night. Just like the knowledge that this was only the beginning. James wasn't just going to destroy us. He was going to make us destroy ourselves. And the worst part? We deserved it. Every bit of it. I looked at my reflection in the window. The small-town girl from Ohio was long gone. Replaced by someone I barely recognized. Someone who had everything and threw it away. Someone who was about to learn the true cost of betrayal. The roses might have hit the floor first. But they wouldn't be the last thing to fall. Not by a long shot. The game was just beginning. And James? He was playing to win. The annual Tech Innovation Awards in San Francisco should have been David's moment of redemption. Instead, it became his downfall. I watched from across the glittering ballroom as he worked the crowd. Desperate. Charming. A drowning man grasping at lifelines. His Armani suit couldn't hide the strain around his eyes. The slight tremor in his hands as he lifted his champagne glass. James stood at the other end of the room, perfectly composed. That same cold smile playing on his lips. He caught my eye and raised his glass in a mock toast. I turned away, my stomach churning. The whispers followed me everywhere now. Tech mogul's cheating wife. The woman who destroyed David Cooper. The gold digger from Ohio who got too greedy. My Valentino dress felt like armor. Too tight. Too expensive. Too much like the life I was rapidly losing. Mrs. Anderson? A reporter from TechCrunch. Young. Hungry for a story. Care to comment on the rumors about your husband's latest acquisition? I forced a smile, years of practice making it almost believable. You'll have to ask James about business matters. I'm just here to support the industry. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. The reporter's eyes gleamed with predatory interest. And what about the rumors regarding Mr. Cooper's legal troubles? Any comment on your involvement? Before I could respond, James appeared at my side. His hand on my lower back felt like ice. I believe my wife has said all she needs to say. His voice was smooth. Professional. Deadly. The reporter retray. Aided, but the damage was done. More whispers. More stares. More pieces of my life crumbling away. David disappeared onto the rooftop garden. I followed, drawn like a moth to the flame that was destroying me. He stood at the railing, the San Francisco skyline glittering behind him. It's over, Emma, he said without turning. Everything's gone. His voice cracked. The accounts, the investments, the patents. All of it. James. He didn't just destroy us. He erased us. I stepped closer, my heels clicking on the marble. We did this to ourselves, David. The words hurt to say. But they were true. He turned then, his face twisted with anger. No, he snarled. He did this. Your perfect husband. The control freak who couldn't handle losing. We were supposed to be happy, Emma. We were supposed to start over. I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. Happy? With stolen money? With lies? Is that what you told yourself when you were emptying the company accounts? His face darkened. You knew about the money. Don't pretend you didn't. You knew everything. He was right. I did know. Chose to ignore it. Chose to believe in the fantasy. The rooftop door opened. James stepped out. Calm. Collected. Lethal. Having a lover's quarrel? His voice carried across the space between us. David's hands clenched into fists. You smug bastard. You think you've won? James's smile widened. Think? Oh, David. I don't think. I know. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. David lunged at James. Blind rage. Poor judgment. Fatal mistake. James stepped aside with fluid grace. Former Navy SEAL training evident in every movement. David stumbled. James caught his arm. Twisted. A sharp crack echoed across the rooftop. David screamed. Security cameras whirred, recording everything. Just as James had planned. I stood frozen. Unable to move. Unable to help. Unable to stop what was coming. Assault charges will look good with the fraud indictment, James said softly. Don't you think? He released David, who crumpled to the ground. Holding his broken arm. Broken pride. Broken everything. Emma, David gasped. Help me. But I couldn't. Wouldn't. The spell was broken. The fantasy shattered. James turned to me, his eyes cold. Choose carefully, dear wife. Your next move determines everything. I looked at David on the ground. At James standing tall. At the ruins of my life scattered around me. And I walked away. Left David there. Left the lies behind. The next morning, the FBI raided David's offices. Evidence everywhere. Too much to ignore. Too perfect to be coincidental. I watched the news coverage from our kitchen. James made coffee. Hummed softly. Smiled that terrible smile. You planned this from the beginning, I said. Not a question. A realization. He sipped his coffee. The moment I saw those roses hit the F. Lower. Every step. Every detail. You never stood a chance. Neither of you did. The divorce papers arrived that afternoon. Clean. Simple. Devastating. I got nothing. Deserved nothing. My friends were gone. My reputation destroyed. My life in San Francisco over. David faced 20 years in federal prison. His wife took everything else. The mighty David Cooper, reduced to headlines and cautionary tales. I packed my bags that night. One suitcase. Like when I first came from Ohio. Full circle. James watched from the doorway as I gathered the fragments of my life. Was any of it real? I asked. Us? The love? The happiness? He considered for a moment. Does it matter now? No. It didn't. Nothing mattered anymore. I left the mansion the next morning. Left the Tesla in the garage. Left the designer clothes in the closet. Left my wedding ring on his desk. The small-town girl from Ohio returning home. Tail between her legs. Dreams shattered. Pride gone. But alive. Unlike David. They found him in his cell 2 weeks later. Apparent suicide. But we all knew. James never left loose ends. Never left stories unfinished. I read about it in the local paper. Cried for what was lost. For what could have been. For what never should have been. The roses that hit the floor that day weren't just flowers. They were a warning. A promise. A prophecy. Of how far a man would go when betrayed. Of how completely he could destroy those who wronged him. Of how patient revenge could be. I learned my lesson. We all did. But some lessons cost more than others. And some prices are too high to pay. Even now, years later, I still see that smile in my dreams. Still feel the weight of what we did. Still hear the roses hitting the floor. A sound that marked the beginning of the end. The end of everything. Sometimes I drive past our old house in Pacific Heights. Just to remember. Just to remind myself. The new owners painted it blue. Changed the gardens. Erased all traces of the life I once lived there. But they can't erase the memories. The roses on the marble floor. The sound of my world shattering. James's cold smile. I work at a small event planning company in Columbus now. Nothing fancy. No tech billionaires. No charity galas. Just weddings and corporate parties. Simple. Honest. Like I used to be. The irony doesn't escape me. I plan other people's perfect days while the ruins of my own life still smolder. Last week, I saw James on CNBC. His company's worth $2 billion now. He looked the same. Impeccable suit. Perfect smile. Cold eyes. The interviewer asked about David. About the scandal. About me. James's response was practiced. Professional. The past is the past. I prefer to look forward. But I saw that smile. That terrible, knowing smile. He's created a foundation now. Helps victims of corporate fraud. The James Anderson Foundation for Financial Justice. More irony. More perfect revenge. He's turned our destruction into his redemption. Sometimes I get letters from David's wife. She's remarried. Moved to Seattle. Trying to forget. Like me. Her last letter told me about James's visit to David's grave. How he left that Tom Ford robe there. Perfectly folded. A final message. A final victory. I keep a newspaper clipping from those days. Not the scandal. Not the arrest. Just the stock prices. The day everything fell apart. A reminder of how quickly it can all disappear. My mother says I should date again. Move on. Find someone new. She doesn't understand. How can I trust again? How can I love again? When every smile reminds me of his? When every rose makes me flinch? I dream about that day sometimes. Not the moment James caught us. But after. When he walked away. If I could go back. Stop myself. Choose differently. But we never can we? Time moves forward. Relentless. Unforgiving. Like James's revenge. I saw Marcus Stone once. At a coffee shop in San Francisco. During my last visit. The ex-CIA operative who helped James destroy us. He nodded. Just once. A silent acknowledgement. He looked tired. Like a man who'd seen too much. Done too much. I wonder if he sleeps better than I do. The news says James is getting married again. Young tech entrepreneur. Brilliant. Beautiful. I want to warn her. Tell her to watch for that smile. To never betray him. To run while she can. But who would believe the disgraced ex-wife? The cautionary tale? David's ghost haunts me. Not his death. His life. The way he laughed. The way he made me feel alive. The way he promised we'd be happy. All lies. Beautiful, deadly lies. I've learned to live with the whispers. The stares. The judgment. Small towns have long memories. But shorter attention spans than Silicon Valley. Here, I'm just Emma. The girl who came home. The one who reached too high. fell too far. My apartment is small. Nothing like the mansion. But it's mine. Honest. Like my life now. I keep no roses here. No expensive perfumes. No designer clothes. Just memories. And regrets. And lessons learned too late. James sent me one message. After everything. After the divorce. After David. Just 3 words. Was it worth it? I never replied. He knew the answer. We both did. Some nights, when I can't sleep. When the memories are too loud. I think about karma. About justice. About revenge. I wonder if James found peace. After destroying us so completely. So perfectly. I wonder if he smiles differently now. With his new wife. His billions. His victory. I'll never know. Don't want to know. The roses that hit the floor that day. They weren't just flowers. They were the beginning. The end. The price of betrayal. The cost of lies. The weight of consequences. I am Emma from Ohio again. Older. Wiser. Broken. But alive. And sometimes. That has to be enough. End.